Hey, everybody. Fascinating chat today as we dive into the world of IoT and wireless communications. And we have really a fascinating company, disruptive innovator in the space with a legendary founder and CEO. But let's chat with Brandon Blues. How are you?
I'm great, Evan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for being here. Really intrigued by the amazing mission and vision at Blues Wireless. Maybe start with introductions to yourself and your role at Blues, and also what's the big idea behind
Absolutely.
Blues
So,
Wireless?
yeah, great. So I'm Brandon Satram. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product and Experience at Blues. I have been at Blues for about 4.5 years. So for most of our 6-year life as a company, and I've been in the IoT space for over 10 years. So
Wow.
primarily focused on, building tools for developers to actually make all this work. And that was the genesis of Blues was exactly that, actually providing developers and product builders with a set of tools and services from hardware to firmware to software that actually allow them to build and deploy connected applications, connected products. This is a very difficult space to operate in. Unlike software development, the tooling is behind the times. There's a lot of complexity when you start introducing hardware into the mix. And so, what we tried to do at Blues and what Ray really started with was this idea of the trickiest part of IoT is that middle piece of connectivity. When you decide you want to take some disconnected thing, your sensors, your actuators, and actually bring that into the digital realm, the way that you choose a wireless module results in all these downstream complex aspects of application development, and we just wanted to make it simple. That's our mission, that's our goal, that's our big idea.
Well, it's an incredible mission, and one I'm very simpatico with. I was at the first Bluetooth SIG like 30 plus years ago and was
Nice.
involved in the first single chip Bluetooth device design.
Yeah,
And of course, we've seen that integrate with almost everything from mobile phones to wearables. But you're taking this
absolutely.
to the next level. Talk about your approach, your particular technology, and
Mhm.
how you're really wireless enabling. With multiple kinds of technologies and modes of operationing. You're really going wide and deep, including satellite, to say the least.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we started, our first focus was on cellular IoT, making cellular connectivity simple. That in and of itself was a challenging space because the state of the
Mm.
art 6 years ago was that you sourced a plastic SIM from somebody or you purchased a module and you basically started the clock on a monthly data plan. The way that I like to say it is the early days of cellular IoT was that the data plans were like the early days of SMS and text messages where you paid $5 a month for some limit of the number of messages. And so when we first launched our product in 2020, the Note Card, it was a cellular only module that was designed to provide data and connectivity with the cost of the hardware. So starting at 49 US dollars, and it comes with 500 megabytes of data and 10 years of cellular service. And so you can treat the connectivity as part of your BOM costs rather than having it, then starting the clock on a monthly plan. But more importantly than that, we abstracted away a lot of the complexity of actually programming a cellular device. Anybody that has been in the software world for a long time would be shocked to realize that when you get into Wi-Fi or cellular modules, you're pulling out an AT commands module or manual circa 1983, basically just to actually talk to these devices and send packets over the network. And so what we built with the Note Card with our hardware product is a set of JSON based APIs that abstract the complexity of talking to the modem so that developers can literally just work with any programming language, any microcontroller that can read and write strings and configure the Note Card by just sending simple commands to configure where the device goes when where its data goes when it comes online, to configure how often it synchronizes with the network, where it stores its data, et cetera. All of that in a JSON-based API. So the Note Card, you talk to it in JSON, it responds back in JSON, and you don't have to learn any AT commands. The benefit of taking that approach is that as we then expanded our portfolio into Wi-Fi and then into LoRa in 2023 and now into satellite in 2024, is that we provide the same JSON-based API. So developers that have worked with a cellular Note Card, now have the ability to add LoRa into their portfolio, or even add NTN satellite into their products as well, using that same API. The idea that we have is that we want to sort of harmonize this context, this aspect of working with radio access technologies. So you don't have to choose one at the beginning and then you're stuck with it for the life of the product. You can choose one, go with it, and then when a new technology comes along, like satellite, or even as cellular moves from 4G into 5G and beyond, you have a consistent way of programming the connectivity piece of your solution. You can swap in and out as you go. And we're big believers in taking that simplicity all the way to the developer, so that the connectivity in many cases can just be an afterthought. Like, I know I'm going to connect this thing, but now I have a portfolio of options rather than picking LoRa up front and being stuck with it, or picking cellular up front, or not being able to incorporate satellite because it's a whole new programming model.
Fantastic. And speaking of appealing to developers, your founder and CEO is a renowned developer and
Yeah.
software engineer and entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, for those who may not be aware, Lotus 123,
Mm-hmm.
of course, a tech legend of Microsoft and Groove later on, and so much more.
Mm-hmm.
What was the original spark that got his interest in this space? Was it this software engineering challenge, problem that he was looking to overcome? Or were there any other unique insights that he brought to the table back in the day when he started Blues?
Yeah, it really goes back to 2011, and shortly after Ray had left Microsoft, he joined Microsoft as Bill Gates was transitioning and stepped in as the chief software architect and CTO for about 6 years. And when he left Microsoft shortly after, in early 2011, the 311 tsunami in Japan that took out the Fukushima nuclear power plant happened, and he was part of a nonprofit that formed on the ground there post 311 called Safecast, and that organization was trying to provide insight into what was happening with the meltdown at the facility. The Japanese government, the utility, had their hands full, so they weren't really able to provide a lot of insight on air quality, on where the radiation plumes were going. And so they decided they'd be citizen scientists, and they'd build their own radiation monitoring devices. The first version just basically wrote radiation readings to an SD card, and they drove around the outskirts of the exclusion zone. But then they started working on the second version of the product and added connectivity to it, first with LoRa and then with cellular. And Ray sort of got a hands-on exposure to how difficult it can be to build an embedded product that's connected, that can be
Wow.
low power, that can actually operate intelligently and efficiently. And so over the course of the 3 or 4 years working with Safecast, he thought about, in his software developer mindset, in his engineering mindset, this is complex. And one of Ray's most famous quotes from back in the day is, "Complexity kills." We say that one a lot because when he sees those kinds of problems, it's, how can I solve this? How can I actually make this easier for developers? And that was the origin of Blues, is really finding a similar class of problems and finding those areas where IoT and connected product development was complex, and then just chipping away at that, finding solutions that developers could embrace and actually get products out the door. So it's a cool story, and it's frankly one where his ability to experience it hands-on led to the genesis of the company. It wasn't just an idea, but actually feeling the pain and suffering and then deciding to do something about it.
Wow, what a wonderful anecdote. And speaking of which, I imagine there's just so many different unique use cases and industries where your technology is being deployed. I'm thinking healthcare, agriculture, just top of mind, must be two big ones. But maybe describe
Absolutely.
some of that, where you see the most take up is, and some of the problems you're solving.
Yeah, what we're seeing, and this is actually where it's interesting, is we've seen AI and ML sort of reach a very interesting fever pitch over the course of the last 18 months, is that this need to harness the data that's being collected by physical goods, I think, is now becoming, what did we say 20 years ago? The famous quote is that every company is a tech company. I think we're at this crux where what we're going to start to see is every company needs to become some sort of an AI ML company. And the way that they do so is by understanding that they have these physical goods and products that are reading so much, collecting so much, and our state of the art for the past 20 years to service a machine or to service a truck or a battery or something along those lines is to physically go to the place, assess its state, and then if you have to do something, do something. But if not, you go back to the truck goes back home to the warehouse. And so this concept of scheduling service on truck rolls based on theoretical end of life or needing to service a product, we can add the intelligence of what's actually happening at a point in time. And in many cases, the machine, the device can correct itself, can fix its own operating mode, or it can send an alert to have somebody come out. But there are use cases where that becomes really, really evident. And we see things from refrigeration. Cold chain monitoring is an important one. We have customers that are operating in logistics, and that's especially true when you start to look at things like blending cellular and satellite in certain parts of the world when you're transitioning between geographies or in blue ocean sorts of use cases, or even long haul trucking and monitoring things like not only EV batteries but lead acid batteries on 18 wheelers and things like that. So we see a lot of those kinds of use cases where you have this disconnected thing, and it doesn't need to be a complex application. Maybe it's just measuring one thing like voltage or humidity or the temperature inside of a cold storage unit. And then being able to send that out to make sure that everything's copacetic if it is, and if not, to take action at a point in time is where we tend to see a lot of really easy early adoption and quick adoption from customers of trying to operate in the space. And then the massive data that they're collecting gives them the ability to build better products in the future, to actually introduce their next rev of a connected battery or a connected refrigerator or something along those lines.
Fantastic. So, as you know better than anyone in the IoT space, security has been a major concern from the beginning, really. And today, still, you get these products with huge, security issues, security not being baked in from the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
default passwords, all kinds of things. How do you think about security, and especially when it comes to these large scale deployments?
Yeah, that's a great question. We definitely don't think of security as an afterthought. I think, like you put it yourself this way. A lot of in the early days of IoT development, I think we sort of thought, well, I'll build this POC and then I'll think about how I'm going to make sure it's safe or how I'm going to make sure it's secure, or I'll put the firmware on here once and know that it's good, but I'll never be able to actually update it remotely or anything along those lines. And so what we have built with a note card is this concept of security enabled by default. Every note card has a secure element inside of it. That secure element has the keys baked in at the point of manufacture, and as well as the connection between our hardware product, the note card, and our cloud service Note Hub. The two are meant to operate as a symbiotic pair. One doesn't exist without the other. And the advantage of having that secure enclave is when the device wakes up, it knows where it needs to go. It knows how to handshake with the cloud service. We don't do cloud-based key rotation. We also don't store keys inside of customer firmware, customer applications. That starts with the hardware module, but it also extends to sort of how we think about how an application engineer may need to reach out to third-party services. It's very common even for a connected product might have its main management cloud service or solution cloud service like the Note Hub in our case, but it may be that an embedded device needs to reach out to a weather API, or it needs to get predicted energy prices so that it knows how to change its operating mode on a given day. Those third-party APIs, again, the state of the art 10 years ago is, well, just go ahead and put the keys in firmware. No one will be able to get them. And we also do not recommend that approach. The way that we facilitate that interaction is our cloud service serves as a secure proxy to other third-party APIs. So customers will set up on the cloud side all of the credentials for that third-party API, the weather service, the energy service, what have you. And then our product, and then when the note card actually needs to make a request to that service, it does so does the handshake there on that and sends the response back to the customer. We actually find that to be a really powerful model, not only because it's secure, but it allows customers to redirect requests if they change, if the underlying API changes, if they need to redirect to a debugging service or logging service. All that can happen on the cloud side without needing to recompile firmware or even ship a new firmware binary down.
Wow, well done. Sounds pretty well thought through. And maybe talk about the process of integrating wireless into products. Maybe you're a medical device manufacturer, any wireless expertise. Most probably don't.
Yeah.
How long does that process take, and what are the first sort of 1, 2, 3 steps to begin that journey?
Yeah, I think the first step for anybody looking at building a new product is to ask, to start to think through what the use case is, what the deployment conditions look like. With a customer building a medical device, it may very well be that Wi-Fi or Bluetooth are the best options because of the nature of where those are being deployed in a hospital setting. If it is a remote healthcare device, we have one customer that actually works in Puerto Rico and other areas that they like to refer to as the edge of the internet in remote settings outside of hospitals. And so they've got a medical product where they have to use cellular, they have to use wide area networking technologies. And so thinking about the deployment location is a good first step. And then also thinking through, what it's like to design a product, what the physical design of a product looks like. And this is an area where, as you said, Evan, a lot of these customers, they know they want to connect something, but they may not have that wireless expertise. And so typically what we do with those customers is two things. One is we have a field engineering team that provides product design reviews. We provide guidance and consulting all the way from recommending antennas to to providing feedback on, PCB board design and things like that, as well as a growing partner network of solution integrators and solution providers that can actually step in and do that full work from hardware design to design for manufacturing and beyond. So if a customer knows they have a problem to solve, but they don't have the expertise in-house, we can pair them with a partner that not only knows all the complexities of wireless product development, but they know how to work with Blues, they know how to work with our products and integrate those quickly. And so going through that process, many of our customers are able to get a pilot out the door in the span of a couple of months. And this is a big challenge in our space, is that a lot of, connected product development can take 2, 3, 4 years or more. And this is assuming the product doesn't get canceled within the first 18 months. We have found that everything that we can do to help customers prove that value at a pilot phase within the first 3 months sets them up to be successful as they go through the rest of the process and actually get something deployed.
Fantastic approach. And talk a little bit about your new satellite technology, StarNote.
Mm-hmm.
How does that simplify, Starlink integration, and what sort of potential do you think it opens up globally for you and customers?
Satellite is a really fun area of wireless connectivity to pay attention to right now, because it is becoming, not only are there a lot of organizations, startups that are launching payloads, launching satellites, but they're actually working with other existing satellite providers like the Inmarsats, Globalstars, and others of the world. StarNote is a product that we tried to take the same approach to with satellite that we did with cellular, which is that we have a device that bundles some of the costs of connectivity in the product itself. And so StarNote is right now, the current version that we have is a module that sort of is an accessory that sits alongside the note card. So our note card today, we have note cards that support cellular and Wi-Fi in a single module, that support LoRa and Wi-Fi alone. StarNote is one that you can add alongside the note card that gives you satellite as an additional fallback. And so one of the best use cases that we see now is customers that use our cellular plus Wi-Fi note card. They start with Wi-Fi, they fail over to cellular, and this gives them that third radio access technology to fail over to. It's an NTN satellite module, and so we work with our partners, Skylo. Skylo provides the connectivity and the network backhaul for us. And then ultimately all that data ends up in our cloud service, just like any other note card. But we actually bundle 18 kilobytes of data with the product as well. So with cellular, we have 500 megabytes of data with the note card. With StarNote, with satellite, it's 18 kilobytes. Obviously, we're on much smaller. The economics of satellite are quite a bit different than cellular today. But we bundle that so that customers can actually use that as a failover device without paying for it. One of the current realities of satellite that we see will likely change is that there are many products out there. Iridium is one good example, where you pay for the connection whether you ever send a packet over the network or not. And so we have customers that are out of necessity having to deploy with satellite with an Iridium module, where they're paying $31 a month just to have access to the constellation, even if they don't ever use it. And we think that that's likely to go away, because we want customers, when they need satellite and it needs to be cost competitive. They need something that they can use when they have to, but it's not the mainline connectivity. We still see it as failover in many cases. But the advantage of StarNote, because that data is bundled, is that a customer can build an application that maybe over Wi-Fi or cellular is sending data once an hour, maybe even every 15 minutes or whatever the use case might dictate. And they're sending a lot of data coming off their sensors. But if they lose connectivity and fail over to satellite, we, again, with our same JSON-based API, allow them to tune what gets sent. So now, instead of sending 200 kilobytes worth of data over, you're sending 50 bytes over that just has the heartbeat, just has the most essential piece of information that you need. I think that's a great use case for satellite today. At the same time, I think that as the cost to fire a kilo of payload up into space comes down, that the cost to send a kilobyte of data or a packet over the network will come down as well. And I really would love to see it if in the next 3 to 5 years, satellite becomes a mainline way of sending data and becomes another globally harmonized connectivity option alongside of cellular today.
Wow, that's fantastic opportunities there. So you have a lot going on at Blues Wireless, events and partner events and meetups, meetings, and various get-togethers in the industry. What are you looking forward to next? I know MWC is coming up next week for many of us who will be there, but what else is on your radar?
Yeah, I wish I could get to MWC this year, because simultaneously Embedded World is having their first North American edition next year. Yeah, so we have been sponsors, we have been exhibitors and attendees at Embedded World Nuremberg the last couple of years, and it's been a great event. And it's going to be in Austin, my hometown, next week, and we'll be we're not exhibiting there this year. First year, we'll kind of check it out. Myself and Ray and others on the team will be there. But our friends we have some friends at an organization called IoT Stars that do an event usually at MWC and at Embedded World on one night during the show. They're going to do their first event on Tuesday night in Austin as well. And we'll be there along with other partners and friends of ours in the space. And we love those events because the IoT space it's about what I like to say is rising tides lift all boats. We have a lot of opportunities to help developers actually be successful here, and we're in it together. Even competitors, even folks selling the same products, so that we can make each other better and help grow this pie, so people can actually get things connected. And so that'll be a fun event, and as well as all those that we have planned for 2025.
Oh, so exciting. And yeah, I couldn't pick a better spot, Austin, for both partying and education.
Yeah.
So perfect.
Right.
And speaking of education, you have kind of a side hustle or a personal passion around making electronics education more accessible to kids and families. You've been involved in that quite a while. Tell us about that, personal
Thank you.
mission.
Yeah. It is one that has been a little bit dormant lately, as I've been quite busy with Blues. But around 6 years ago or so, as my kids were a little bit younger, I got really excited about teaching them electronics. Most of my career, 25 years, I was a software engineer and product person, more on the software side of the world. And I got into tinkering, hardware, IoT, and beyond a little over a decade ago. And that was such a fun experience for me. And my kids were young enough that I was going through and inviting them into some of that. I taught my kids to solder probably before I should have, some of those kinds of things. And
what could go wrong? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Working with my first Arduino devices, Raspberry Pi, all of the usual things that we find ourselves getting pulled into. And I really wanted to share some of that with them, but in a way that was accessible for kids. And so my wife and I started an organization several years ago called Carrot Pants Studios, a little tongue-in-cheek name, but the idea was to provide resources for families to teach their kids electronics. And we released a couple of books. They're actually picture books that are designed to sort of educate kids about how electronics work through story. And so the components on a breadboard are literally, capacitors, resistors, 9-volt batteries, the kinds of things that kids would build physically, but that we bring that to life through the story and teach kids how to really create working circuits by solving problems. And it's been a fun experience that the whole family has been involved with, and hopefully we'll be able to find some time to continue more of that in the future.
That's great. Yeah, I used to love as a kid those, build your own FM radios or AM radios in that case. And a lot
Absolutely.
of that's disappeared with digital and online.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
great to see that being kept alive. Thanks so much, Brandon. Really insightful,
Yeah.
intriguing mission and chat, and look forward to catching up.
Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, and thanks everyone for listening and watching. And check out Blues Wireless; they put out some great content on their various social feeds. Thanks.